Thank you very much. And Sue is going to be our first buyer. We want to acknowledge that. I want to first thank the Breakers for hosting this great event. This is a hometown for myself and Jimmy Buffett. We've been partners for 20 years. And I must say that when we think of wellness, we think of this place, because there's not a better place to come and spend time, and we both spend a lot of time here. Just for the benefit of people who aren't from the United States, I learned yesterday at the panel there's a very large international presence here. So Margaritaville is a song that was written 40 years ago by an iconic American artist, Jimmy Buffett, both a writer and a singer. And that is sort of come to stand for paradise in the American culture. I thought I'd just start by telling you how Margaritaville came to attend this event. An old friend of mine sent me an email who knew Susie Ellis because she knew we were in the business of active living communities, or about to get into that business. And so I opened it up on the plane, and I looked at it, and I saw yoga, and I saw living well, and I saw, ways to have your heart do great things without taking any medication. And I read through the whole thing, and I called her up, and I said, this is great, but what about the fun, right? Because we've just gotten into this business, and as you'll see in a second, based not on the idea of living longer or even of living better, but based on the idea of enjoying yourself and having a good time, the response has been just remarkable. So I thought what we'd do is show you just a little bit of a video, really more about how the culture reacted to this announcement of ours. And to sort of not bury the lead, the partner we did this with was marketing this community in Daytona, our very first one, as something called Oasis. Logical. And they had, I think, 600 people sign up in 6 months. And based on what you're about to see, really with no marketing spending, we sit here with 100,000 people having expressed a real interest in buying a home at the community. None of them as lucky as Sue, who pitched me when I got here, and so she's at the front of the line, which is lucky for her. But anyway, why don't you run the video?
What are you gonna do when you retire from 1PP, Dad?
Just retire.
Fat chance.
You wouldn't last a week.
What about you, Dad?
I'm gonna go into the retirement business with Mr. Jimmy Buffett.
What?
I'm serious. Do you realize there are millions of baby boomers right now cashing out, and they're gonna want a retirement village of their own? What better place than Margaritaville?
Mr. Buffett, get back to you on all
He
this?
doesn't know about it yet. But I'm getting my ducks in a row.
They're planning a new retirement community specifically inspired by the life and work of Jimmy Buffett. It's called Latitude Margaritaville.
This next story goes out to my mom because I think she would really love this place. Jimmy Buffett is coming up with a chain of Margaritaville-inspired senior living.
What better place to live out the golden years than Margaritaville?
Oh my God. Really, it's kind of a brilliant idea.
I have a feeling it's going to be a hit.
It's brilliant. Can we all move in? Aimed at active retirees who like nibbling on sponge cake, watching the sun bake.
It's supposed to open up summer 2018.
The Jimmy Buffett Company, known for restaurants, hotels, and vacation resorts, recently announced they will build a string of easy breezy senior neighborhoods. The first is called the Latitude Destination in Daytona Beach.
According to the project's website, inspired by Jimmy Buffett, your new home in paradise features exciting recreation, unmatched dining, and fantastic nightlife.
Hey, offering fitness facilities, lap pools, spas, live entertainment, and of course, booze in the blender.
Your mom's on the phone.
Mom? I know, I got you one. Call you back.
That sounds, I'm like, what age do you have to be to move in?
I know. I believe we're all kind of right now.
Margaritaville. It's not just a state of mind. Now it's a place to live. Introducing Latitude Margaritaville. New homes in 55 and better communities where you can live the Margaritaville lifestyle every day. Find your new home at latitudemargaritaville.com.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And, you know, in thinking about how it relates to wellness, I woke up this morning and on our local paper, there was a list, I guess yesterday here, from Mehmet Oz about sort of the definition of wellness. And there were 5 life adjustment tips. One was maintain an ideal blood pressure. One was exercise 30 minutes a day. One was eat healthy food that you can actually enjoy. 4 was control your stress and sleep. And 5, curtail your addictions. The last one we're not so sure about. But I think the point really is that, you know, it goes to the definition of what wellness is. Because I think you have to add number 6 to that list, which is you got to have fun. And, you know, I think to a certain extent, there's one theory of wellness communities, which I would say maybe has a coercive element to it. You know, you got to eat a certain way. You got to exercise a certain way. You're sort of being told at a stage in your life. It's a bit like, you know, legislation. And, you know, I think that what this experience, which to a certain extent is a pretty powerful case study right now. I mean, 100,000 people, if you think about that, that's a lot of people who are basically voluntarily signing up to buy a home. And, you know, I think that it really makes the point that people want to have those things available to them, but the definition of wellness and what it means to be well certainly has to include what maybe is our, you know, most basic appetite, which is wanting to have a good time. And fortunately for me, when people say, what business are you in? Because our business just very quickly, we built a very large business on this basic idea of paradise, a vacation state of mind, wanting to have fun. We do $1.5 billion of sales, and we probably sell more different things than any other brand, certainly in America. We have restaurants, we have resorts, we sell all kinds of products, most things that, you know, Ralph Lauren would sell. And I think this is going to be the most powerful thing we do, because while we're a broad-based brand, the baby boomers certainly are our sweet spot. And what we noticed was really since Del Webb, there hasn't been a powerful brand in, you know, what we call the active living business, preferred to retirement. So I thought what I'd do just for a few minutes is share what we've learned about fun and the aspects of fun. So the first thing about it is that people like to have a connection with other people, something they share, right? I often use the example of a sports team, the Yankees. If you go to a Yankee game, and you're an investment banker, and you're sitting next to someone who, you know, is a policeman or a fireman, your two lives really haven't connected at all. You don't really have much you share, and then you're sitting there, and the guy gets up to the plate and he hits a home run. And instantly, you turn to that person next to you, and you give him a high five, and you give him a hug. And that's because you have a shared cultural passion, and, you know, you're both Yankee fans. And that really is what the idea of Margaritaville has been about, and the power of its cultural goodwill, because you share the love of, for lack of a better image, palm trees, the beach, paradise. And so you can be from very different walks of life, right? But that shared passion you have for that culture is what then leads to the next very important part of fun, which is being social, right? So as we've designed our communities, the homes are terrific, but what we've learned is that the home is really a means to an end. What people really are more focused on are the amenities and the social life. And we did a very interesting study years ago, because we also sell blenders. And people who, the blender company that was our partner, Sunbeam, was sort of trying to figure out who buys blenders. So they did this consumer research, and they set up a construct, which basically was who's social and who's not. So if you had someone over to your house once a week, right, you were what was called an avid party host. You were social. And that sort of becomes a proxy for someone who likes to have a good time. because being with other people, you like to have a good time. And then if you did it once a month, you were sometimes, and if you did it once a year, it was occasional, and if you never did it, you never did it. So basically, if you never did it, we concluded you're someone who doesn't like to have fun, right? And it was interesting, and not to name drop, but I shared this with Warren Buffett years ago, and he turned to me and he said, you know, John, there's a lot of equity in that. So I said, well, I can go do a lot of consumer research. So we became the experts on this whole idea. So instead of looking at the consuming public as who's rich and who's poor, you know, who's white or who's black, let's try and look at the American population as to who likes to have fun and who doesn't. So it's interesting. So 12% of the people in this country really like to have a good time. 15% of the people in this country like to have a good time, sort of. Another 15 to 20%, you know, have had a good time once a year. And as I said before, half the country doesn't like to have a good time. But then what's interesting is when you look at who those people are. It is absolutely fascinating. That sort of 12 to 15% of the country that likes to have a good time are the most educated, the most affluent, okay? And they are essentially any consumer marketer's holy grail. And what was interesting for us was the average age of that group of people was about 35. And our group of people, our consumers, lined up exactly with those people, except they were 45. So as we approached the idea of active living, you know, what is it that people are really looking for? So we actually have done a fair amount of work in preparation for starting to sell in November, and it's really interesting. I mean, medical care is clearly very important, but some of the things that people were really focused on, it's fascinating. The one that surprised me the most was pet care. Makes sense, you love your pet. So at our place, we're gonna have something called Margaritaville, where, and the basic idea is that pets should have a good time too, right? So you come, your pet has a good time. But it was really interesting, and you know, there's another sport that's taking hold in this country, and again, if I'm thinking of the concept of wellness and living well, right? And obviously exercise is part of, you know, all of the things going on at this conference. But if you haven't, I'm actually curious, how many people in this room have heard of a sport called pickleball? Right, so maybe 20% of the room, right? It's the fastest growing sport in America. And it is the USTA, I know for a fact, is concerned about it. And it's basically like 3-on-3 basketball instead of full court basketball. And it is absolutely the rage, right? The other thing I noticed that just brought this whole idea home to me, that sort of the core element of wellness is being with people, being social, and enjoying yourself, and having available to you some of the more narrowly defined parts of wellness, like eating well and things that are going to keep you healthy in the narrower sense of the word, is about 2 weeks ago, I went actually with Paul Leone, who's here, up in Syracuse. We were in Syracuse because we spend the summers up there, and we went to see Paul McCartney at the Syracuse Dome, right? 45,000 people at the Syracuse Dome. And I was looking around, and I was absolutely amazed, but really shouldn't have been amazed, right? I mean, he wrote the song When I'm 64. And the average age of the people and by the way, it is not, particularly that place, it is not an easy place to get to. It's not a comfortable experience, really. It's an old building, right? You wait online, you're shuttled around like cattle. I think the average age in the building was over 60, probably 65. And people were having the time of their lives, right? And again, it was that same phenomena I described earlier, like the Yankees. It was a shared experience. So, you know, I guess the point of it all is that there are certain things that never change, and people's desire to be social, to enjoy themselves, remains. And I mentioned before that sort of Webb in this industry had been certainly the largest brand, and bought by a public company, Pulte Homes, and I think lost some of its specialness over the years. But as I was flying down here yesterday, I was curious about Del Webb. I'm a New Yorker, and I kind of knew that he owned the Yankees, but I thought it might be interesting to see who this guy was who really sort of gave birth to the idea of active living retirement communities. And what was fascinating to me was Del Webb built the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas for Bugsy Siegel. So I was thinking Del Webb was going to be someone who was sensitive to the idea of people aging gracefully. And it turns out his whole background really was as a builder in Las Vegas. And when they went to build the first active living community in Arizona, it was a very contrarian move. No one had ever done it before. And the reason no one had ever done it before was because there was a general perception that as people got to their sort of the back nine of life, they wanted to be close to their nuclear family. They wanted to be close to their grandchildren. So the idea of building a place in Arizona where you were trying to attract them to separate from their family really seemed anathema. And what ended up happening, and the numbers were sort of funny to me, they thought they'd have 10,000 people show up with express interest, and they had 100,000 people back then show up and express an interest. And what they learned was that no, people liked the idea, they loved their family, they loved their grandchildren, but they really liked the idea of going, what we sort of call and what we do, back to summer camp, going back to a place where they're with their contemporaries and they can enjoy themselves and see their family when they see their family. So I guess, at the end of the day, as many new things that are going on, and a lot of those obviously are being showcased here, and incredible advances in medicine, and of course the fact that 65 is the new 45, and we're all going to live a lot longer, and 45% of the population is going to be over 55. I think that one of the reasons that Margaritaville has endured for so long, I often say to Jimmy, if you were going to become iconic and stand for something, it's good to stand for something that people liked anyway, right? He didn't invent the beach. He didn't invent a sailboat. But he, through his art, came to stand for the authentic version of it. And what people respond to are those memories in their lives. I was talking to someone earlier today and explaining how what we do has moved from one generation to another. And I've learned this anecdotally over the last 20 years. Raising a family is a hard thing to do. Children are great, but they can be a pain, right? They get earrings through their nose, they get tattoos, and life is never smooth. But what I've noticed in speaking with people over the last 20 years is, what's the best memory you had with your family? The best memory you had with your family tends to be that 1 week of vacation, right? If you come to the Breakers with your family for a week, you remember it well. And in our case, the soundtrack of that vacation, here it was, not bad, was that song. So in a funny kind of way, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Margaritaville, Del Webb, and thank you all.
Some people claim